This is Why Small Business Matters from Northumbria University, supporting small businesses with the Help to Grow management programme.
Welcome to this episode of Why Small Business Matters. My name is Sarah Stephenson and I'm part of the team at Northumbria University working with hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses. Today I'm joined by an old student of Northumbria University who's gone on to work with the Incubator at the Business Clinic, and we're going to hear about how he has been supported by the services at the university to start and scale his business. Mark Renney is the founder and CEO of Wubbleyou, a software company based in North Tyneside. And welcome also to Graham Baty, who's the head of student and graduate enterprise at Northumbria University. Welcome today on Why Small Business Matters. We're talking all things entrepreneurship. Mark, can we start with you? Do you want to just give us a bit of background about who you are and what your business does?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Sarah. So, my name is Mark Renney. I run a business called Wubbleyou. And Wubbleyou is like a software and tech company. So we empower scaling businesses to grow more quickly and solve challenges by leveraging technology. And we do that in two ways, really. So it's technical consultancy to help them understand how to use tech, and software development to basically plug the gaps, like build custom software where there's nothing off the shelf to do that naturally. So that's us. Graduated Northumbria University in 2011. It's actually started the business here as well. So quite an apt conversation we'll have today, I'm sure.
That makes me feel old.
Well, we'll hear a little bit more about how you set the business up and a bit more about the Incubator that I believe Graham will talk a bit about as well. So, Graham, just give us a bit of background about what it is you do and how you help graduates to set up businesses.
My role at the university, I'm responsible, one of the teams I'm responsible for is the Student and Graduate Enterprise team. And the university has a remit to provide support to any current registered student or any recent graduate in terms of helping them and assisting them through and into self-employment and or business startup as an alternative career path to the standard sort of graduate model, if you like. So we provide a raft of support around that, from having our own dedicated co-working space, the Incubator, where Mark and I are based today. So we have that as a facility for our students and graduates to use completely free of charge. And then around that, we provide complete wraparound support to anyone who wants to develop their idea for self-employment or business startups. So we do some of that internally as a team, so working with the individuals to develop their ideas. But then we also have an external group of specialist advisors whose support and expertise that we draw upon extensively in supporting those students and graduates with their ideas in terms of self-employment and startup. And that support that we provide, Sarah, is not just to get these guys to the initial point of starting trading, it's then to take them through, ideally through the first 2 or 3 years, to try and get them to the point where they're on a sustainable footing for the longer term. With the best will in the world, lots of people can do startup support. It's a much harder journey to get them through those first 3 years. But if we can do that and get them successfully through that, their success rates beyond 3 years are really quite high of them maintaining and securing the business and securing a trading base for the longer term. So that's the work that we do some other work around enterprise skills development and other things in terms of extra and co-curricular activity, as well as some working with academic colleagues in embedding enterprise in the curriculum. So that's one of my roles, one of my hats.
Fantastic. Mark, tell us a little bit about your initial ideas. How did this come about? How did you meet Graham? How did you think about setting up a software business?
It was, a strange sort of time of my life, because I guess it was 2009, end of 2009, and it was a sandwich course, computer science. And we had to go and find out a year in industry, and frankly, the job market was just kind of crap at the time. There wasn't really many options. It was all pretty low paid, and none of it really sort of appealed to me. So at the time I was thinking, you know what, I'm just going to go on and do my third year, finish off my course, and then go and figure out what I'm going to do in life. That didn't sound very appealing either, to be honest. And I was just walking through sort of Pannon basements, and a leaflet stuck to my shoe, and it was for the Incubator scheme. It was something along the lines of, the message was basically like starting a business as an option as well. And I was like, cool. So, one of the other guys on my course, Mike, who I started the business with and since bought out, we spoke about that and, thought, well, actually, if we're going to spend a year of our life doing something, we might as well try that rather than going working for someone else. So that's what we did. In that first year, made far less than we would have on internships. But, after we did it, we sort of realized, well, actually, there's a viable business here. We can grow something here, which is like something that we build and foster. And that's what it sort of went on to be,
And do you think that it was the confidence of youth doing it at that age? I don't know, how old were you then, 19, 20, thinking, oh, I can do this, I'll just give it a go?
Yeah, I think there's something you sort of lose and maybe rekindle as you get older in terms of that, like, I don't know what it's called, the naivety, I guess, of like how hard things are and like, what the risks are on things. But yeah, I think that naivety was something to do with it. I think as you get older, like things like that get more difficult to do, especially as you sort of like have responsibility and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's like a great time to start a business.
So you decide you want to start a business and then you find this leaflet. What happened next?
Yeah, I guess we ended up speaking with you, Graham, and we had that conversation in the Wyn Jones building at the time. And, we were sort of thinking about what we want to do as a business, settled on web design at the time, which we don't do now. And we were actually called Jigsaw Visions then as well. We realised that was a crap name. Switched to Wubbleyou instead. And from there, it was just sort of like, we got a ton of support from Graham in the university, so got all our business cards printed, office space, access to just like amazing sort of people. Some of the people I still speak with. John McRae's just outside. I've known him since the start of Wubbleyou because he helped us out with marketing like 12 years ago. So like all of that, as sort of Graham was saying, it's like it takes a lot of like the fundamental difficulties away from sort of like growing a business in the early stage. So that's what we did there,
And Graham, can we just talk a little bit about your support and the importance and scale of startups and scale-ups for the region? I mean, you said as an alternative perhaps to traditional grad routes. Why is it important to support startups and students setting up on their own?
Yeah, when we first started out as a university, so a little bit of the history of Northumbria. Northumbria hadn't really done anything around real dedicated support to self-employment and startup, Sarah, prior to 2003, 2004. One of my colleagues who I worked with then, who Mark knows, a guy called Roger Candy, it was Roger and I who helped set up the service, but we worked on a sub-regional project with both Newcastle and Sunderland universities on something called New Ventures, and we brought in some European funding to support initially building or trying to build a support system to assist students and graduates into self-employment. And the whole premise around that was, well, two things really. One, to try and address historically low business startup rates in the Northeast. And if we thought there's lots of talented graduates coming out of Northumbria University, but also the other two universities I mentioned as well, then can we provide a mechanism for them to stay in the region and to hopefully grow and scale those businesses and provide employment opportunities, not just for the wider region, but also thinking selfishly about Northumbria graduates as well. So trying to maintain those relationships with the businesses for the longer term. But also it was, and we still face this as a region to an extent, that we had a lot of graduates coming to the region, staying in the region to be educated through the HEIs here, but then obviously leaving the region to go find employment opportunities, graduate employment opportunities elsewhere. And so the premise of the project was also to try and address that issue and try and retain more graduates. And by default, by creating those businesses, again, if some of them go on and grow and scale, they will create, hopefully, high quality job opportunities for the future and therefore be able to take on graduates from Northeast universities and so on. So the whole thing becomes fairly cyclical. So that was the aim and the premise, and that very much became the aim for the long term for the university. It took a few years, I think it's fair to say, for us to build a groundswell and to build that support and for the university to fully buy into what we were trying to do. But in the last 10 years or so, the university has fully supported us, and is looking to continue to grow the service and the support that we provide.
And Mark, once you were set up in business and you were trading and so forth, what continued support did you receive, or continue to receive now, maybe?
Some of the stuff you do, Graham, and invite like all of the sort of alumni of this service too, I think is really important. Like the get-togethers, I think, like meeting people who are on various stages of their own sort of journey, who are, respectively sort of in front of or behind maybe where you are. And I think like speaking with other people who are like on that journey and who are sort of facing the same challenges is really helpful as well, because I think, a lot of scaling businesses face the same challenges fundamentally, and being able to see people who are facing them or have solved them actually gives a lot of perspective to one's own situation. So that's really helpful, and just like other opportunities as well. So like opportunities to sort of speak in and give back in places. Graham's very kindly put our logo on the wall in here.
So Mark, can we focus a little bit on Wubbleyou now? Tell me a little bit about the challenges that you're facing as a business. Obviously, there's an awful lot in the news at the moment about recruitment and retention and various other challenges you might be facing.
Yeah, I think like the same challenges we'll face as like any other sort of scaling business, which is like constantly sort of dealing with new things and the usual sort of firefighting stuff. But I think what's maybe a little different and getting more challenging is definitely recruitment and staffing. It seems like there's I think it's very much like an employee's market for anyone sort of technical at the minute. And I think that's great for the industry itself, but it's obviously a challenge for smaller tech businesses. So I'd say that's probably our primary sort of challenge right now, Sarah.
Are you managing to recruit graduates from universities locally, or how's that working?
Yeah, so we still manage to sort of recruit. So apprenticeships, and we're looking at an internship with Northumbria University right now. So we've got something sort of going through that for an associate BA business analyst role, which is really cool. So there is ways around it. It just takes more patience and takes more time.
Of course. And what plans do you have for the future of your business? I like the fact that you talk about, you're solving challenges for other businesses. Yeah,
so we're 11 people now, or will be at the end of this month. And my objective really is to get to a business of circa sort of 25-ish people, but not like at any cost. It's got to be through like doing things properly, delivering value for clients. I think it's got to focus on that. Growth at any cost, I think, is dangerous. And the reason I want to do that is just to make sure we've got just something which is sustainable and we can deliver like the value we deliver at just like a larger scale. We can just get more done. So that's my objective. And just like branch out a bit, so do a lot of technical consultancy and software at the minute. And I'd like to understand like how we can sort of create more offerings around those sort of core services, just so we can deliver further value to our clients that way as well. Ultimately, like growth is on the horizon for us.
And can I just ask about your own growth as a leader? Obviously, your business is growing. How do you feel about your own skills to lead and manage your business going forward?
I think one of the symptoms of growth is constantly understanding like where you're inadequate in various areas and sort of where you've grown. I think you notice this as a software developer a lot. You open an old code base and sort of look at it in disgust for how you would do things differently now. And I think like when you reflect on your own skill set sometimes and your interactions, like that can be the same sort of way. But I think that's a really positive thing. So I think something I've learned especially is that it's like someone who's very technical. The way I would sort of tackle things like when I was sort of like younger in the business would be just different. Like now I think you go from like something where being capable from a technical perspective is not really the right skill set for growing a business. Like it really helps growing a tech business, but it's more about like that's all like sort of like understanding people, looking for win-wins, empathy, aligning people behind a vision. And those are the sort of things which start to become really important, focusing on what you can control and releasing sort of like anxiety from the things that you can't control. I think, because there's so much on your plate. So it's like stuff like that. I think like I've certainly realized that that's like an ongoing journey and something I'm sort of pursuing. And things I wouldn't have even considered when we started the business, didn't even realize that those things were things.
And where do you look for support in that growth journey as a leader?
The people around me, I think help a lot. So, mentors and, people in my team for advice as well. Graham, when the time's right. And like I read a lot as well, watch YouTube videos of people who are sort of also on this journey. I think there's a lot you can consume, like 20 years worth of knowledge in a book, so I really like to read.
One thing that Mark's done very successfully, I think, in the last few years is really build up his external network of mentors outside of what I would say we've provided to an extent, or people that I've introduced through the university and supporters and mentors and things like that. But Mark's really started to build up his network through association with the North Tyneside Business Forum, with Paul Lancaster and people like that involved in Startup Week in Newcastle and so on. So clearly, as you look to grow and develop the business and develop his vision for the business, I think there's been probably quite a lot of influential conversations from people like that, which I think have been really useful for him.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. I totally agree with you. I think there are people in those networks who have had fundamental impacts on the way I think, or things that the business have done. It's amazing what a small conversation, a networking event can turn into a few pints at a pub and turn into something which is like a tangible change in life or business. So it's certainly a positive influence.
That's something we talk a lot about on the podcast, is networking and having those casual conversations that potentially could lead to something in the future. I think that's something that comes up a lot. I'd like to understand a bit about how you're building a resilient business at the moment. There's a lot of talk about making business sustainable and looking not necessarily for productivity growth, but more around making it a resilient business for the future.
Yeah, I think it's a challenging prospect, because I think resilience comes in multiple forms as well. There's resilience to change in the market. There's resilience in productivity, in that if you stand still you're going backwards, with the rate that technology is moving. So it's almost like spinning plates there. From our perspective, I constantly feel like I'm trying to look forward to see, where is tech going to supersede what we do as a service now? Web design sort of you can get moved in about 2014 for adverts on telly for 1&1 for websites for £4 a month. I sort of realized at that point, websites in the form that we do them are done. We've got to get out of this very quickly and find something else. That's why we focus on custom software. So I think there's that side of things, looking forward in that respect, especially in tech, but also how do you build a resilient team? How do you build a culture which is strong, and it's not not pool tables and plants and pints, but fair pay, psychological safety, having an environment where people feel they can thrive. And I think those things are the building blocks of a resilient business, but just take a lot of time to achieve and maintain, So I guess there's a bit of a ramble, but that's sort of my general thoughts on the topic.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. Find out how Northumbria University can help your business thrive through the Help to Grow management programme, delivered by leading small business and enterprise experts from Northumbria University, with the support of leading figures from industry and experienced entrepreneurs. The programme supports senior managers of small and medium-sized businesses to boost their business's performance, resilience and long-term growth. The 12-week programme is 90% funded by the government, and the fee payable by participants is £750 and has been designed to allow participants to complete it alongside full-time work. The in-depth, high-quality curriculum supports you to build your capabilities in leadership, innovation, digital adoption, employee engagement, marketing, responsible business, and financial management. By the end of the program, you'll develop a business growth plan to help you lead your business to realize its potential. To find out more about the program, the modules, eligibility, and fees and delivery dates, go to northumbria.ac.uk/help-to-grow.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. I'm Sarah Stephenson, and today we're joined by Mark Renney, founder and CEO of Wubbleyou, a software company, and Graham Baty, the head of student and graduate enterprise at Northumbria University. What about remote working? How does your business function? Do you have people all in the office, or do you have a flexible working policy?
Yeah, I mean, we're fully remote at the minute. So we don't even have an office. So everyone's distributed sort of around the northeast, and a couple of people sort of distributed abroad as well. I think we'll look to be like remote first. So we'll get an office at some point, but it's like for collaboration, not like sort of congregation. We just go there when it makes sense, or if people want to be there. No, not like force people there, you know. I think it's like an interesting topic because you got big companies like Apple and Google forcing people back into the office for a few days a week, and you know they're not stupid. Like, you know, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. It's like, what do they know that sort of I don't here? But you know, I can only focus on what I can control, and that's remote first eventually.
You haven't had people who work for you saying, actually, I'd really like to go back to an office environment. I don't want to use my own electricity at home. I want to come and use yours.
It's a bit of a mixed bag. Like I think being really generalist here, right? Like technical people tend to be quite introverted and quite like, you know, don't mind sitting at home. But, you know, through the interview process and like, you know, interviewing different types of people, you know, people have said that. You know, like I had someone say to me the other day during an interview, like, do you not get bored sitting at home like all day? And I was like, yeah, I kind of do. You know, which is why I come out and come to places like, you know, the Incubator in Northumbria. So yeah, I think, you know, I think we will be sort of like harangued into getting some office space at some point, so the people who want to congregate can.
Graham, can you just tell me a little bit about the importance of bringing some of your alumni back into the university? You know, what role can Mark and other alumni play in helping sow the seed, really, with graduates, so this is a viable option?
Yeah, Mark touched on this a little bit earlier, Sarah, and there's 2 or 3 ways that we try to do that. Mark mentioned, first of all, we've always tried to run sort of get-togethers, social events twice a year. We always do that. When we had a more limited team, smaller team than we do now, that was only twice a year. But there was always value, I thought, in bringing together those guys who were coming through with new ideas and just displaying a healthy interest in all things enterprise and entrepreneurship, through to guys like Mark and those beyond, you know, the cohort before Mark, so thinking about the Brett Jacobsons and people like that of this world. Bringing those guys together in the same room, inspiring one another is obviously a huge thing. Just that sharing of knowledge, contacts, giving people the confidence that you can have a go at doing this in a safe environment, in safe surroundings, for largely a minimal amount of money. You can have a go at it. If it doesn't work out, it's fine. It's not the end of the world. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, you can go and find graduate employment. So there was an awful lot of those conversations shared, and still are to this day. We ran a social event recently, but we're trying to build upon that, and we do much more of those networking events now because we've got the facility and the space to be able to do that, which is fantastic, obviously. Mark and other alumni are encouraged to come in and use the incubator as and when they would like to. If they need to use the meeting room space, the space that we're currently sat in, the boardroom. If they've got a couple of other meetings in town, they just need somewhere to touch down for an hour or so, then they're very much encouraged to do that, because again, that knowledge that they can impart and chat to the guys who are resident here and using the space on a regular basis is invaluable. And again, shared connections and contacts and everything that come from that. And I think we also try to, and we've done this pretty much since day one, is encourage our student graduate entrepreneurs who've gone through that process of startup, etc., if they're willing to come back and do some interventions in the curriculum as well, or at co-curricular events, extracurricular events there, and really get them involved in that. So I know academics like colleagues of yours like Steve Ball and things like that draw heavily upon our graduate entrepreneurs to come in and influence and talk to students in each academic year coming through, and just get them, Mark and others, to share their experiences and what they've gone through, why they chose that path, etc.
When you like, I started a new business a little while ago, and it's like the amount of stuff that you have to do to do that is like, there's a lot, and I sort of like know what I'm doing. Like when you're in a position where this is the first time you're doing it, and then you've got to like figure out how to sell, interact with other people in like a commercial way, and like all of that other stuff, like network. It's like, there's a lot, and I think what the hatchery does really well, it takes a lot of that base stuff away. And I think, you facilitated like the limited company set up for us, so all of that stuff was sorted, all our business cards were sorted, etc. And all we had to really focus on at that point was the selling bit and learning how to grow ourselves rather than like all of like the core business stuff. So that safe element and removing the base sort of challenges around that, I think, is hugely important.
It's a heck of a challenging thing to do, isn't it, for anyone to start a business at any point in life, but particularly to do it whether as a student still through a placement year, as Mark and Mike did, or even straight after graduation. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do, and if we can just provide some assistance around that, just as we assist other graduates into employment through providing opportunities with employers, etc., then I'm a huge believer in that's what we should do. And the kudos that we get as an institution from that is massive. And I know Mark and many other businesses besides have gone on to look to recruit interns and take on graduates from the universities. So it just goes full circle in terms of what we're trying to achieve, which is fantastic to be a part of.
I'm interested to know, the support provided at that initial stage sounds fantastic. And I'm just wondering now, Mark, when 10, 12 years later, you're employing a whole team of people in your business, how do you go from that startup entrepreneur to the leader of a business? You've worn all the hats. You've been the salesman, you've been the admin person, the finance guy, the tech expert, because that's your business. At what point do you say, I can't do all those roles anymore?
I think there's a personal challenge around that I think like business owners tend to learn in their own way, because I think, in that process, it's easy to try and hang on to things. I can do this better and faster, than training someone else to do it. And I think like that mindset in itself is quite challenging. You're like learning to let go of things, although I can do it better, I'm not going to scale the business if I try and do everything myself. For me, it's like I have a sort of cycle that I try and follow, where it's like get something working, document it, and then try and hand it off to someone else. And then that's just like that cycle is how I try and grow things. In reality, scaling a business is really messy. So, someone's off sick, so suddenly you're doing it again, or it's really easy to get dragged back into it. But I don't think that changes. I think it's a constant thing. So my main focus now is sales and growth, but I still get dragged back into the delivery sometimes. COVID hasn't helped that much. When suddenly you've got a couple of team members off. So I'd say like it's a constant sort of challenge, but I think people who are scaling businesses really, like me, be mindful of it. Like, in the long term, you've got to figure out how to get that stuff off your plate.
Mark, tell us a little bit about how you can help respond to client needs.
Yeah, so there's two ways really, right? So, typical sort of scaling business, right, really understands their own challenges and what it is they do, right? So if you take a manufacturer, probably like the person running the business and the whole team are like excellent in manufacturing, whatever it is a manufacturer. And you probably grown a multi-million-pound business off the back of that. But where they really struggle is to understand how to leverage technology to empower their own growth and solve their own challenges. I think from research I've done, about 90% of scaling businesses don't have any technical experience in the leadership team. So how are they going to drive forward tech in their own business? And that's fundamentally where we step in from a consultancy perspective. We can plug that gap. We can help them turn their own objectives and challenges into a technical strategy that we can work with them to drive forward. So, what that might look like is, the core bit of their business, which is delivering their product or their service, is heavily reliant on Excel or paper or some aging technology, and it's how do we replace that with something which is more resilient and future proof, and ultimately is going to deliver return on investment for their business. And then the software development side of things as well. So if you've got an idea or a challenge in your business which can't be solved with off-the-shelf software, we'll build that. So we build software for the likes of the Department for Education, for the National Apprenticeship Awards. That whole platform is a platform we've built over sort of 4 or 5 years. And various sort of like internal tools and business intelligence systems for clients as well, typically returning somewhere between sort of like 300 and 800% return on investment on the work that we do with them, either through sort of increased revenue or cost saved. So you can quantify this as well. Quantify this and what's the stress reduction look like in the business, and how is it going to ultimately, rationally generate return on investment to make it worthwhile.
You shared a lot of advice today in our conversation, but I'd like to finish with a couple of tips that you can share with graduates and with business owners who are perhaps in not quite at your stage, who are wanting to scale their business. What would you advise? Let's start off with you, Mark.
I think for graduates, reflect on my own situation and when we started the business. There's never a better time to do it, I think, than when you're sort of in or finishing uni. Looking at my own situation, I had no responsibility. The risk was really low if it failed. There's not a whole lot that could have gone wrong that I couldn't recover from. So I think it gets harder as you get older and you buy a house and you have children and whatnot. So I think there's never a better time than when you're at university to start a business. I think scaling a business, I think if you're sort of on that journey, I think you really get smacked around sometimes by your environment. And I think mindset and how you sort of approach things is really important. Focus on the things you can control. Anything you can't control, don't let it create anxiety, because I think it's really easy to dwell on an email you've had or a conversation that you need to have. I think just focus on the stuff which you can control and don't get anxious about the rest of it. That's what I've learned, surprisingly recently as well. Great advice.
Graham, can I ask you some tips that you'd share?
The single biggest thing is for people not to assume that there's a market, there's a customer, that there's a need for what there is that they're looking to do. So test and validate what it is that they're going to do. Don't write a business plan. Please, 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 on the early stages, do not write a business plan. It's not necessary. It might never, ever be necessary depending upon your financial position. So test and validate. Get as much research done as you possibly can about identifying who your customer is, and what ultimately do they want your service, and what would be they willing to pay for it. The more that they can do that, then the much better chance you have of got success. And the other thing I would say is seek support. Don't think, particularly if you're a sole founder, it's incredibly challenging to do this on your own. Seek the support through whichever agency, whichever university that might be. There's lots of wonderful people here in the Northeast who, once you get to know the business community, people are very, very supportive, and I suspect Mark has found this on his. Absolutely. That people are always, particularly if they've been successful, they will always be willing to share a positive note, some views, some ideas, a shared contact, whatever that might be, that will just benefit you in some small way. Even a conversation over a cup of coffee once a month to share your problems can be incredibly valuable. So it's seeking that support through various mechanisms. I think it's the most valuable thing to do.
That's great advice.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much.
Thanks, pleasure, Sarah. No problem at all. Nice to see you.
Thanks to Mark Renney from Wubbleyou and Graham Baty from Northumbria University. If you'd like to find out more about business support, and listen to more episodes in the series, including our live event from the Baltic recently, please head to northumbria.ac.uk/help to grow.